Can you hear it? Barely. Hi guys, it's Anissa from Two Traveling Texans, and today we're in San Francisco and we're gonna head to Angel Island. I've been wanting to go there for years. The weather is not ideal, as you can see behind me. It looks like a lot of fog, but it's actually a mix of fog and also smoke from the wildfires. And my thoughts go out to everyone that's affected by those California wildfires. But today we're gonna take the ferry behind me to Angel Island, and I'll tell you more about it when we get there. Let's go. We have a few guests with us today. If you've seen my channel before, you might remember my friend Julie, who came to Sanibel Island with me. Hello. And then we also have my friend Diane with us. And of course, Russell's behind the camera. We'll see if we can get him in a few shots. So we're off on the ferry to Angel Island. This ferry also goes to Sausalito and Tiburon. I'm not sure what the order of the stops is, so we'll have to see. We made it to Angel Island. You can see it's a beautiful place for hiking. Would be a little bit better, of course, if it was a little clearer. Oh, we'll see what we can do. So there's a lot to see on Angel Island. There's a museum that covers the whole history of the island. There's a Civil War area, there's a World War I and World War II area, and we are gonna head to the immigration area. Yeah, so Angel Island is also known as the Ellis Island of the West. It was a detention center. A lot of immigrants from China were detained here, processed here. We're going to learn more about it when we get to the museum. We found the perimeter road. Wow, this is steep. That's a little turn you didn't realize.
Yeah. The ferry was huge, right? I forgot. People got on
Yeah.
the ferry and got here to come here.
Wouldn't this be a nice place to have a picnic lunch? So this bench is in memory of, I guess it's a couple who escaped from Germany. This says, "Thank you, America." That's the kind of thing that, you know, you want to hear about your country and makes you proud about your country. So this is the Ellis Island of the West part, where they would detain immigrants. A lot of immigrants were deported from here, held here. We're going to learn some of their stories. So this room, if you look at it, it says it would comfortably hold about 50 to 60 people. I'm looking at it, I don't think it would really hold that many, but they said there were 200 Chinese men held here at one time.
Have you guys been here before?
No.
So this was obviously an active immigration station from 1910 to 1940, and it largely exists because of the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882, which was the very first law that ever prevented a specific nationality from coming into the country. But there was an exception. You could come into the country if your parents were American citizens, thus making you an American citizen, 14th Amendment. But That exception became useless in 1906 when an earthquake, huge earthquake in San Francisco occurred, and it caused a fire that burned down City Hall and all the paper documents that were inside of it, which included marriage licenses and birth certificates. So there was no way of telling who was an American citizen and who wasn't. And so Chinese immigrants can now use it as a loophole and say, well, I'm an American citizen, I was born here, you can't prove that I wasn't, ignore my Chinese accent, because there's no paper trail proving otherwise. And I'm gonna bring my 20 sons in China to the country with me. Well, if you didn't have 20 sons, you just created 20 slots of people that you could bring into the country with you. And you could actually sell those slots on the black market in China for thousands of dollars. People would buy those slots, pretend to be your son or daughter to come into the country. And if you made it to the country, you would have to use that identity for the rest of your life. We call these people paper sons and paper daughters. If you were European, as long as your medical exam checked out and your paperwork checked out, you were processed into the country within hours to days maximum. If you were Chinese, though, you had to pass the special interrogation process, which took 3 to 4 weeks because there was a waiting list. And so you were detained in these barracks for 3 to 4 weeks waiting for your interrogation. And so this room was for the Chinese men. It was segregated, Chinese versus non-Chinese. And this room was healthy for about 50 men, but there were over 200 men in this entire room. When the Chinese were here, they were obviously very frustrated to be detained here and having to wait for their interrogations. So they would write Chinese poetry on the walls to kind of express their anger and their frustrations, and that's what all of these carvings are. There are 200 poems carved into the walls. And the way the interrogations would work is they would first interrogate either your paper father or your real father, and then they would interrogate you, and the idea is that your answers had to match up. So they weren't really looking for accuracy, they were looking for matching answers. I personally think there was a shelf in front of it. Like if you see these two nails right here, there was obviously something covering it and protecting it and preventing it from being filled in.
So do we know if they were like original to, the people that were carving them, or they were just like reciting ones that they knew?
These were original poems. A lot of these poems are talking about the island.
So this one here is actually an original bed. It's the only one that's original. All the other ones are replicas.
And I'm not a gigantic person, but when I try to walk through here, my shoulders tap to your side. So if I were, a huge 6'2" tall German guy, this wouldn't be very comfortable. And look at how close the beds are together. The person next to you, the person next to you snored or had bad gas, you had to deal with that. And there were no steps climbing up to the top bunk. You literally had to
Oh my God!
climb.
Oh. Wow, I didn't even realize that.
Hopefully you don't have to get up in the middle of the night.
One of our docents who gives tours here, it's belonged to her mother. And the interesting thing about this suitcase is there are firecrackers on the left-hand side. Women used to put gunpowder in their suitcases to repel moths and mice, and if you had a 3-week journey on the boat, you had to worry about that.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And this one has a pretty interesting story. So this lady right here, she's in her 90s now. This picture was taken about 10 years ago. She donated this suitcase to us and this picture, and her name is Lena. She lives in Oakland, California. And this is Lena, the baby in the picture. This picture was taken after her mother had spent some time in the US, got married and had a child. But her mother, Lam Wan, came to the country when she was 16 and she came here by accident. Lam Wan had an older sister in China who was 18 that was supposed to be in an arranged marriage, but she got kidnapped the day before she was supposed to come to the US. And so her father was like, well, what do? I put all this money aside. She's supposed to leave tomorrow. They sent Lam Wan, the 16-year-old sister, in her place. Lam Wan pretended to be her 18-year-old sister, came into the country, married this guy. I don't know if he ever found out that she wasn't who she said she was, but he probably didn't care.
Oh my gosh.
And so they had a kid together, settled in San Leandro, California, and lived happily ever after. And the sister was released in China. I think her parents paid the ransom, and she stayed in China, never came to the US.
So there's a newspaper here that's from 1912 when the Titanic sank.
Is the European men's playground. And so it was open from breakfast time to dinner time. And there was plenty of room for them to roam around because there were fewer European that building was there, it was just an empty lot, and there was a volleyball net. And since there were a lot more Chinese men than there were European men, they had to use that area in shifts. Otherwise, it would have been too crowded. And that only allowed them to go outside for an hour a day.
So all the rest of that time you're in that incredibly cramped room.
So what was that?
So all the rest of that time you're stuck in that incredibly cramped room.
Yep. And so in order to improve the food quality, they would stage food hall riots, and that was meant to get the attention of the immigration officials. And so they would have these food hall riots, and the immigration officials responded by hiring American Chinese chefs from Chinatown. And those chefs, since they lived off island, they could send messages to and from the island if you bribed them. And so there was a code. You'd go into the lunchroom and you'd have your lunch tray with you, and you'd walk up to one of the chefs and you'd say, "The beef looks especially good today." That meant that you got messages slipped under your rice bowl.
So we just finished an amazing guided tour by the ranger here. It wasn't supposed to be a guided tour, but since there aren't very many people visiting today, she came along and told us so much interesting information. You'll see, of course you saw some clips of her talking in this video, but I'll have a lot more information that she shared with us in the blog. So you'll have to check that out as well. But I think, some of the things that hit me, because it's really, a lot to process, is, the 200 people in that room. I just can't even imagine. They only get 1 hour outside, what they were doing for the other 23 hours. All the, graffiti was amazing to be able to see that and read some of the translations. Then it was also interesting to see the bathrooms. It's just a lot to think about how these people were treated, and the interrogations that they had to go through, how scary that must have been, and then also those medical examinations. Can you hear it? Barely. How's that? My water bottle. So this is the Immigrant Heritage Wall. So it looks like families have created a spot to honor their loved ones. One that stuck out to me here is this, I'm not going to even try to say her name, but we heard about her on our little tour. She was detained here 20 months waiting for her appeal. Then I also thought it's nice, there's a little plaque from Southwest Airlines. You could definitely spend some time reading this and get really emotional. They did a really good job with this. So you don't want to miss the last ferry leaving Angel Island. So we decided we were going to take the shortest way, which is also the steepest way on these stairs, down to the ferry. Going down won't be as bad as going up. It's nice they have a handrail. We had such a great day on Angel Island. I'm gonna have to come back because there's a lot of it that we didn't get to see. I want to do some more hiking and also see the World War I, II, and Civil War areas. But still, we got to see that immigration center, and that was really moving. We learned a lot about the history of some of the Chinese immigrants and immigrants from other countries that were detained there. I'll have a lot more information about Angel Island and some of the stories of the immigrants on my blog, so you'll have to check that out at twotravelingtexans.com. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe to my channel. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.